Welcome to Hale VolleyTalk. Alongside Harrison Austin, I'm Elliot Skelly. Very excited to be back for his second season. Joining us today is the head coach of the Olentangy Liberty Patriots, Dave Hale. Coach, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Hey, 2021, your team won their first regional final, punch your ticket to the state tournament. Since then, they haven't missed it, and you're going to open the season as number one in our preseason polls. So, talk to me about the journey that this program's been on since you took over.
Well, I took over a long time ago, and it has been quite a ride. We started off just me trying to grab kids in the hallway, getting basketball players that I knew from coaching basketball also, and just trying to get things going. And to be where we're at now, it's just been amazing. We've had some really good teams along the way, but obviously by far this is one of the best groups that we've had for a while.
Absolutely. And when you look back at the past few years, 2021, you did really well. 2022, you didn't see your team drop a set in the first 14 matches. This past year in 2023, much better competition, but you end up losing the first set, then you record a loss in the second match. How did the team's mindset change going down the way, and especially in that playoff run as you went to the state final?
Our guys were really focused. Really, from the time that we hit the postseason, once we finish with the regular season, we have another meeting to just try and figure out, okay, so what are our goals? What do we need to do to attain those goals? We do it at the beginning of the year. We kind of talk about what our goals are for the regular season, and then we meet again to get us ready for the postseason. And I think it really helps the guys to get in the right mindset for things.
Sure, yeah. Well, hey, you finished last season 18-4. You had a great run in the state tournament all the way to the state finals. You had a 2-0 lead up against Muller, had a chance to close it out in the fourth, but unfortunately it just went their way. What were your takeaways from that match?
Well, I'm hoping that the guys just are still having that desire to say, you know what, we were right there, we're right on the cusp of winning the first state title for the boys volleyball team here at Liberty, and that they want to get back there, and that's going to drive them to make sure this year we do all those little things to get us right back in that position. I just talked to them today about the fact that we have lots of guys back from last year's team, but that doesn't guarantee anything because everybody's working in the off season, everyone's working to get better, and it might even put more pressure on us because we were in the state championship last year, so every single team we play against is going to be saying, "Hey, Liberty was in the state finals last year, and we want to bring our best against them. And hey, we knocked off Liberty is going to be what everyone's going to kind of say." So, and we open up with a really tough schedule. Our first match is against Darby, who should be really good. Then we have a quad at our place with Berlin, Brecksville, and Saint
Xavier.
X.
Yeah.
Saint Xavier. Yeah. So right off the bat, our first four matches, we could go 0 for 4, and still have a really good team. So the thing where we just have to come ready to play and see how we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I was able to see your last two playoff matches against Muller, and both times it was like two of the most incredible matches I've ever seen. And really, you guys were right there, and it's just happened to go the other way. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
both
it's
went
awesome.
5.
Yeah, both went 5, and like quite a dramatic 5 in both situations too. So yeah, no, that's awesome. And I do think I've had limited interactions with some of your guys, and it seems like they're all in a pretty good spot mentally about staying on the path and getting better.
Yeah, so let's turn our attention now to the Centerville Elite Tournament. You guys made a good run in that tournament. Past couple of years, you've been getting the invites. And what has that experience been like at that tournament? And is winning the Elite Eight a part of the team's focus this year?
What we really like about that Centerville tournament is that it gets lots of teams that we don't usually see because it's a lot of teams from the Cincinnati area usually. I think Darby and us, we're the two Central Ohio representatives, and other than that, it's mostly like the Dayton and Cincinnati teams. And St. Ignatius was there, so that's a Cleveland team. But it's good for us as a place to play against some of the top competition from around the state, instead of just the things that are against the teams that are local to us. And it's something where it's a tough kind of tournament thing because you play against one really tough team, followed up, you get to rest for like a minute or two, and then it's okay. Here's another really tough team that you play against, and then you rest, and then it's okay. Here's another really tough team that you're playing against, and it's back to back to back. It's super tiring. It's somewhat about endurance because, like we last year we beat Elder, and then we got to play against Moeller, and then follow that up by playing St. X. Like that's an amazing lineup right there to go against. So I think that it's just the level of competition. Hopefully, we can get a similar thing at our quad that we're having a week from Saturday. But it's just all about, especially at that time of the year, trying to get as much high level competition as you can. Again, heading in for the tournament.
For sure. You talked about facing some of the teams from Cincinnati. Let's take a look at some of the teams that are in Central Ohio. And you found a lot of success in OCC league matches. You've gone 26-0 in the past 2 seasons. And that being said, this year, 14 matches of your allowed, 22 is a lot when you look at your schedule and when you look at the competition you're facing. What are your thoughts on the OCC's realignment that will go into effect next season?
It'll be interesting. I mean, it happens every few years where they realign the teams and that kind of stuff. And I think that it's good because it means that we're adding more teams to the sport of volleyball. I think that it's indicative of what's happened. Once the OHSA accepted boys volleyball, then it made it so that we got a lot more schools that were interested in promoting the sport. And it really, I think, is helping the sport to grow even more than what it was. And so that realignment in my mind just means that, hey, we've got many more schools that are starting to join. And of course, they have to balance out the league to make it so that they're relatively the same number of teams in each division.
Right. And hey, it's something you touched on before. You've got pretty much everyone coming back. The only loss you had was Jack Solenberger, your libero. But right now, as it stands, like 6 of your 7 main starters played on 18-1s club teams in Ohio. You got Caden Whiteside, who was, as a junior, voted the 2nd best player in Ohio. And I do think Bentley deserved it, but had Caden been voted player of the year, I don't think it would have been a huge travesty. So you have a player of the year caliber outside hitter, and you were able to pick up to replace Jack Austin Mallory, who had never played volleyball for you before, but's been playing for A Squared for many, many years. And because of that, you were actually able to get around the having 3-player max on a 1 club team. So he was able to play with 3 other players on A Squared's 18-1s. How big was it to get him on the team?
Well, it's huge. It was a big loss. I mean, Sully was tremendous for our team. Just having someone that we knew could get that pass exactly where it needed to be. So Connor, our setter, could be able to put the ball where it needs to go, and then our hitters could go hit. I mean, it all starts with a pass. And yeah, I'd heard about this kid, Austin. I actually had him in class last year. Like everyone's saying, oh, yeah, he's really, really good. And it's like, okay, well, great. But he also loves to play lacrosse. And so that's what he's been doing for the past 3 years. And then the lacrosse coach and I kind of talked about things, and we were willing to try and let him play both sports this year. Wow. Because he is intending to play volleyball in college. And the lacrosse coach is like, well, you ought to play for your high school team also then. And so we talked, we shared schedules and all that sort of thing. And pretty much I spoke with the lacrosse coach today, just making sure that we're all on the same page about where he's at and what practices he's going to and all that sort of thing, just to make sure that he's able to do both things as best as what he can. But as far as with our team goes, yeah, it fills up a big hole because Jack Solenberger was tremendous for us, and we wouldn't have made it as far as we did last year without him. So hopefully Austin can kind of fill that role for us and help us to get back.
Let's take a look back at the schedule. More importantly, the preseason. You guys had some people that were missing, but you competed in a couple scrimmage events, including the Pick North Summer Scrimmage. What have you seen from your team so far in this preseason, and what are you focusing on as you approach the first matches of the year?
Well, preseason is obviously for us is a chance to kind of get everyone back into playing with each other. We have guys who are playing on different clubs, obviously, and that sort of thing. And so some of them are used to playing, but they've got to get used to their own teammates. When it's a ball that goes between 2 guys, who's going to play it, who's going to be more aggressive, that sort of thing. So it's all about communication. It's really what we've stressed the past couple of weeks of practice is communicating every ball just to make sure that we're all getting on the same, and so that by the time we hit postseason, then we'll be where we need to be. We still haven't practiced with everybody because we've had Ryan Severson has kind of been sitting out resting his knees for the past couple of weeks. So he's going to hopefully practice some this week. So we still haven't actually practiced with our full team. But we have lots of guys who are getting lots of really good experience. For the weekend scrimmages, we had both Caden and Ryan were out. And so it allowed us to have some of our sophomores get some practice, Mike Harris and Zach Jackman. And so that's giving them just some great experience of practicing with some really good guys, playing against really high level competition. And so hopefully they can next year be able to help transfer that and be able to help us this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So hey, looking at your schedule coming up, you got Derby that you're hosting, and then like you said, the quad match. Why is scheduling competitively so important to you? Because like you said, you legitimately could go 0-4 because these teams are so good. And
Right.
What are you looking to see from your team in this stretch?
Well, it's a thing where we have lots of teams that are in our league. So really the non-league, we want to try and make it as competitive as possible. We don't really have any options about who's in our league. Not to take anything against the teams in our league, but we want to try and make it so that we're getting enough high level competition so that when we get to that tournament, we're ready to go. And we don't have any surprises. We're not all of a sudden like, oh, this is what the level of competition is. We want to make sure that during the regular season, we get as tough matches as we can so that when we see those types of things in the tournament, no big deal. We're ready for it. It's just about how they're coming together, about with rising to the level of competition, about making sure that we are making the plays that we should make. I talk to them all the time about really doesn't matter who we're playing against. We want to make sure that we play the same way every single time. So whoever's opposite the net doesn't make a ton of difference except what kind of balls you are seeing come at you. But the plays that we make should be consistent. And so I'm just looking for us. It's super early. So we're still getting a feel for things. And so I'm not going to try and put pressure on them and say, oh no, we dropped a set or we dropped two set or we lost the Derby. That's not in my mindset at all. I'm all about us trying to get better every single day, every time we step on the court, whether it's in practice or games, and hopefully that'll parlay itself to the end of the season.
Absolutely. Hey, one last thing. 2022, you guys did this ace chant.
Target Haggerty again and can't handle it.
Serve receive.
I tell you, if I'm leaving,
It's the only one that I've ever seen that I actually think looks cool. Everything else, all these kids do this, I don't like any of it. But the sledgehammer, I love the sledgehammer. All students do that sometimes. Last year, I barely saw it at all. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've never been huge on the cheering stuff, cheerleader things. I say to my guys, it's like there's too many teams who spend too much time figuring out what they're going to cheer and less time working on things that they should in practice. So I've never been a big on every single point cheering or the out, way out, and all that kind of junk. I think that's spend time in practice, practicing volleyball. Don't spend time figuring out what cheer you want to say. And I'm also not big on belittling other teams either. It's like the other team hits the ball into the net, saying how high is the net is just stupid because you didn't do anything. You just stood there. The other team made a mistake. And so I'm all about not putting down other teams. And so they wanted to do something for an ace. I was like, okay, you can do something for an ace. I honestly don't remember who it was who came up with doing the sledgehammer, but I'm like, okay, that's fine. You get an ace. That's something you did a good serve. So
That's right. Well, I trust that that cultural problem would be corrected, and we'll see that ace chant again this year. But anyways, Coach, hey, we appreciate you coming on. Good to finally get you on here. I'm sure you guys will have a great season. So yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, that was Dave Hale from Liberty. Awesome to get back going here. Really excited to be back for the start of another season of volleyball. My name is Elliot Scully. We started this back last year. I'm at the University of Alabama. I'm on the club volleyball team here, and I went to Thomas Worthington way back when.
Yeah, my name's Mahir Hassan. I'm a sophomore studying sports journalism at Arizona State University. I do a lot of things, especially broadcasting and writing. I broadcast for a couple clubs, which includes ASU's NCAA teams and club teams. And I write for a lot of ASU's NCAA teams, including the volleyball team that went to the Sweet 16. Again, Thanks to Elliot for doing this podcast, bringing me on last year as we continue on and start off season 2.
All right, so looking here, this is the OCC alignment we touched on. This will take into effect next season. Essentially, all they're doing is adding a third one. It was just Capital, Central, and Cardinal last year, but they're adding Ohio, Buckeye. I think, like for football or sports that have a team for all of them, there's typically 5, which is why it's Ohio/Buckeye. But the big news is a lot of these teams who maybe didn't have the best competition, those matches are taking up less of their schedule. So Liberty, we talked about, they went 26-0 the past couple of years. Now, instead of playing 14 league matches like they are this season, next year they'll only play 10. But obviously, hopefully those programs continue to develop. But I would say the only thing that was confusing to me about this was the OCC Challenge last year. I know like a team had to drop last minute, so they added in, I believe, Grove City. And I was like, that's kind of dumb for adding in teams that aren't in the OCC. But Grove City actually is in the OCC. They just weren't in the OCC volleyball conference. So I was surprised that I didn't see them added to this. I think Central Crossing falls in that same category where they have a team, but they're not in the OCC. So I don't know. I wonder if that's just a program size thing. Hopefully those programs continue to develop and eventually we'll have every team and it's just follows the football alignments. So first, I think we'll talk about the Wittenberg Summer Tournament, which happened back in July. I was able to attend that. Berlin ended up winning it all. And, one of the things Jim Cornette was able to talk to me. We had him on last season. He's head coach of Berlin. He's able to talk about this sense of urgency that I think this Berlin team is feeling this year, because a lot of their core group have been starting for 3 or 4 years. And, they've been competitive every year, but they haven't quite gotten to where they wanted to be. And you look at last year, Berlin was switched to D1 for the first time last year. Had they stayed in D2, had the OHSAA delayed bringing in boys volleyball an extra year, there's a really good shot that we're looking at Berlin as state champions right now in Division 2. So they were that close to kind of missing that rotation. But I think they have a really good shot of coming out this year. Showcase their skills well at the tournament.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Olentangy Berlin is they've had that competition, as we talked about with the OCC. OCC Cardinal, they're facing a lot of good competition overall. That was the case last year. It was a 3-way tie, really, or a 3-way race, you could say, between them, Dublin Jerome, and Derby for that title. And it was just a great competition down the way. So I think Berlin has proved themselves to be one of those potent challengers in Central Ohio, went out to Mount Vernon in the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how Jim Cornette's side can rebound from that.
Absolutely. The team that lost in the finals was Thomas Worthington. They were missing a couple guys, including Finn Rubin, who's going to be one of the best middles in the state this year. He's a junior. He's committed to Loyola, which is a very good D1 program. So I think with him back, it'll be definitely at least closer, if not a Thomas Worthington victory. So it'll be really interesting to see how that team develops. They should be solid players as well. And we had Firestone, who I think will be a good player in the North, probably not going to top St. Ignatius or Brecksville Broadview, but we'll see as that unfolds. They'll definitely be solid. The team that really impressed me, though, was St. Charles. For a Division II team, they competed very well. They went undefeated in pool play and lost to Berlin in the semifinals. So I don't know. I think there's a really good shot that St. Charles comes out of the region and maybe even wins it all this year.
Yeah, I think so too. And we'll talk about it in our rankings, but that region in general is just going to be a little bit up for grabs, especially after DeSales had Andy Feltz for a long time. He founded the boys volleyball program at that school. He retired this year. Andrew Navarre takes over. And there's just a big turnaround from what was a very senior heavy lineup last year to what is still going to be a senior heavy lineup this year, but with different players overall.
Pickering to North scrimmage Derby. There are a couple other teams there, but the big result there was that Pickering North was able to beat Derby. So I think Pickering North will definitely be a major player this year. The main change I want to talk about with Derby that really kind of messed up my perception of them, they had first team All-State libero Aiden Kolb last year as a junior, which is to make All-State as a junior is obviously very impressive, but to make it as a libero is even more impressive because it's not a very stat-heavy position. It's not flashy like outside hitter or maybe setter. So he was absolutely probably the best libero in the state. They moved him to outside hitter, which I'm sure he's a solid outside, but I don't think it's the case that it's either, hey, you could either be a first-team All-State outside or a first-team All-State libero. What does this team need more? I think it more speaks to the lack of pin depth that they have right now. So if they're taking him off the libero position, I don't know. I don't think that bodes well for Derby's future this season. We also had the Pickering to North Super Scrimmage, not the Summer Scrimmage, Super Scrimmage. That's a really cool event. Basically, there like 8 teams go, and then there's a 20-minute timer, and they just play till the timer's done. So there's no sets or anything like that. So you'll end up having like 28-19 or something as a final score. It's really interesting when you have time as a layer in a volleyball match. We did that for intramurals last year here at Alabama. And it's like, there's something about like, not just say we're down 3, but we have to score 3 points in 2 minutes or we lose the game. There's like this sense of urgency that comes up. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, I think Liberty played very well for not having Ryan Severson and Caden Whiteside. So obviously they're going to be a great team. Pickerington North did not lose to anyone. So again, they'll be good. The only other takeaway I had was that I think Olentangy will be more solid than I thought they were going to be. They've got Carter Shomach and they've got some guys coming up from JV who are really solid players. Their former head coaches were club directors. They were able to get a lot of people in at the younger levels to club teams. So yeah, they'll be a really good team this year too. Might even crack top 10 here in the next couple weeks. So we'll look at matches this season. We got the Battle of Dublin. And the only thing I want to touch on with this is typically it's at the end of the season. Like I believe Jerome, Kaufman, and Scioto, the 3 Dublin schools, will go and they'll play for best of 3 matches against each other, and the winner takes home the trophy. It's usually right before the OCC Challenge, which is right before the playoffs. This year it's March 8th, which is the first day of the season. So it's interesting that they decided to make that decision. I don't know why, but I don't know. This Saturday we'll have the Mount Vernon quad. They'll have Moeller, St. Ed's, and New Albany come up to Mount Vernon to play in that quad. Really interested to see how that works out. I think Mount Vernon's dealing with some injuries this year. I know Parker Gant, I think, has a torn labrum, is what I've heard through the grapevine. So that's speculation. So he might even be setting this year, is what I've heard. So that'll be a big test for Mount Vernon. They're playing Derby the Friday night before that. So that'll be an eventful 24 hours for them. And then I think this is going to be Moeller's first big test to see how legit they are. New head coach Casey Piper, obviously the great Lee Meyer, retired. So yeah, that'll be really cool to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think for all 4 teams involved, New Albany was in the Central Ohio talk for a while, but then just kind of tapered off, just didn't have the competition to really, and the moxie, if you will, to really make a run in general. St. Ed's is a team that I think you and I, but you especially, had some high hopes for to start off last year before they tapered off and some other big teams in the Northeast region started getting more conversation. So it'll be interesting to see what we see from them. They play Hudson the night before, and Hudson went to the regional final, won the regional final, and then went to the Final Four last year. Did not end up losing until they lost to Moeller in that semifinal. So that will be an interesting test to Hudson to see how they fare with a lot of their players leaving, and with St. Ed's to see if they can be a talking point in Region 2.
Yeah. Also, St. Vincent, St. Mary, St. Ignatius are playing, I believe, that Friday as well. So good test for both teams, see how legit St. Ignatius is and see if St. Vincent, St. Mary can recover from their state finals loss and losing, graduating a bunch of players. So we'll turn to look at now the regions, and we'll see what teams do we think will make the state tournament. Obviously, 1 team from each region. For me, I think I've got Region 1 in Division 1 level, probably going to look like Liberty coming out of Region 1. I do think Brexville Broadview Heights will get it done in Region 2. This might be a little controversial, but I actually think Thomas Worthington will come out of Region 3. And I know I'm an alumni, and it's tough to like make that call, but I legitimately do think that they have the talent to get it done. Any success that they had last year was driven by talented sophomore and freshman classes. So those guys are growing up, and they've got Finn Rubin, obviously, Kamin Doyle, one of the best middles in the state. Absolutely. I think the competition, the way it's stacked up there, unless Darby can pull it out, or maybe Jerome's better than I'm anticipating, I think Thomas Worthington can get it done there. And then in Region 4, I think St. X, they just don't have any holes this year. They're a really talented team. And I think they'll come out and finally get to the state tournament after a few years off.
Yeah, I kind of sort of agree with you across the board. I think Liberty just has a lot of players returning. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Jack Solenberger is really the only big star from last year that's out the door. Brexville Broadview, I think, has a chance. I could see St. Ignatius taking the region as well. I'm going to go with Brexville Broadview just because I feel like they have more of an uptick compared to Ignatius does this year. Region 3, I think Thomas Worthington, I see your point with Thomas Worthington. I'm just going to take Derby just because I think knowing where that team was last year, knowing they were a favorite against Dublin Jerome in that Region 3 final before falling, I'm going to take them. And then I agree with you. I think St. X has it. I think there's something within that class of 2024 that could pay dividends. I think seeing your team, whether you're watching on the sidelines or playing on the court alongside your brothers, there's something when you lose a 5-set game in the regional final 3 consecutive years that does something to you. And I think That class of 2024 has a lot of talent. The class of 2025 coming in also has a lot of talent. So I think it's a good combo. Not as flashy as last year when you have Bentley Myers State Player of the Year, but that's still a solid squad that Bill Ferris has, and I think the Bombers are going back to state.
And then at the Division II level, Region 5, I see St. Charles coming out. They have a ton of firepower, and they put that on show at Wittenberg. I'm really excited to see how they play this year. They honestly are playing at a Division 1 level, I feel like. Region 6, it'll probably come down to Archbishop Hoban and St. Vincent St. Mary. I think that Archbishop Hoban will actually, by the end of the year, be able to develop and get it done. Region 7 really is pretty much a toss-up. I don't really know. I mean, all the programs are small enough to where it'll be tough to pick a winner out of there, but maybe Chardon. I think Chardon's seems well run or Independence. Those are probably the two teams I'd go with. Region 8 again will be probably a bloodbath again this year. But I think Archbishop McNicholas, who we picked against all of last year, didn't even mention, I don't think. And then they ended up going to the state tournament, shocking both of us. I think they have the legit talent to come back and win it all this year.
Yeah, I think across the board, I agree with you. As much as I like the sales and who they're returning, I think St. Charles just has the firepower as well. Region 6, I think it will come down to St. Vincent St. Mary and Hoban. I'm going to give the edge to Hoban as of right now. Right now, if the game were to happen this weekend, I'm taking STVM. Because the game's happening in May, I'm going to take Hoban. Region 7, I mean, take whoever you want. I'm going to choose Independence to return to the Final Four. And then Region 8, you can basically put 5 teams in a hat. You can put them in a fishbowl, draw one out, and that's going to be whoever wins it. I would say right now, in terms of whoever would be the #1 seed, I'd take McNick.
All right, so taking a look at our Division 1 rankings this year, first ones of the preseason. We both have Liberty up at the top. I've got St. X, then Berlin, Moeller, Rexville, Broadview, St. Ignatius, and Pick North, Elder, Townsworth, and Darby. Looking at two of our big differences, I think you've got Moeller over St. X. I'm interested to hear your rationale for that one.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Moeller is Casey Piper was the JVB head coach. And while they weren't the best JVB team in the city of Cincinnati, he knew what it's like to coach those players. There's something about a JVB coach that just knows a lot of stuff. You get a lot of players that are coming from different schools and even from different club teams, and you bring them all together and you put a cohesive team together. Not to mention, yes, Moeller loses Ben Haggerty. Yes, Moeller loses Wilton Patterson, but Tyler Gesselbrock as an OH1, that's a pretty good sign for me. And even as an opposite in general, he's just that guy. He's been a consistent guy in the Crusader program for so long. I think my problem with St. X, just off of it and covering a lot of these guys when they were at the JVB and JVA level, it's a little too much talent through the middle. You have Brady Jones, who would probably be your starting middle. You have Noah Boyette, who could also make some runs in the middle as well. Charlie Bender, I saw him play a lot of middle when he was at JVB and JVA. Matt Schulte as well. I think there's going to be a change. I think maybe in both of them where they're either playing in the back line and both of them have a good defensive prowess within them and they can go forward. Maybe Bill Ferris plays him on the outside. Back line as well. I think Max Stewart might be the libero. It's just they have the talent. It's just a question of, is someone in the right position? That's the biggest thing with St. X.
So then we've got Darby, you've got him at 4, I've got him at 10. Again, we'll see. I mean, it's very possible. Obviously, they're a storied program. There's absolutely a chance that they can come back and get back into that top 5 position. But I don't know. I don't like the move of Cole from libero to outside. Well, it's not to say I don't dislike it. I dislike what it entails for the rest of the team. To have a libero that good and take him away from the libero spot, I just don't think means that you have a lot of players around them. It's possible they have a really good JV libero that they just have a lot of trust in and they'd rather have Kolb on the outside. I don't know. I don't like it at all. Mount Vernon, again, we talked about the injuries. That'll be a big test for them, their first 4 matches of the season, to see whether they come back onto my top 10. And then you've got Beaver Creek at number 10. I would say the thing about my rankings is there's a distinct lack of Dayton teams. There's no Centerville, no Beaver Creek. Centerville really had a rough season last year, and Beaver Creek I just think lost a lot. It's possible that those teams get back in. I'd have to see it to believe it. Then we look at Pickerington North. I think you might be undervaluing them personally. I do think that they've got some talent on the outside and Penn and Setter. I don't know. I think they've got a chance to make some noise. I don't think they'll end up coming out over Berlin, but I'm really excited to see how that works out. I think they've got a quad somewhere down the line: Berlin, Beaver Creek, Pickerington North, and Mount Vernon. So that'll be pretty interesting to see. Berlin's got some pretty good quads going this year. So
Yeah, Pick North on paper looks pretty decent. The biggest thing is, can they play against these bigger teams? Like you said, Berlin as well, and some of those other teams in the region that could really cause some noise. I want to see Pick North as a state contender this year. I just feel like, how much does competition hinder them in general? And when you schedule against tough competition, how do you perform? I think if they can perform well, I'm going to put them in my top 10.
it's definitely a prove it year. So then we will look over here at Division 2. I will say, you might not have known about the Wittenberg tournaments. That might be on me for not telling you. I don't think that the Sales will be number 2 in the state this year. That's about the only thing. That everything else pretty much is kind of a toss up. But yeah, I don't think the Sales is going to be over St. Charles or a lot of other teams on there this year. Still, I'm sure they'll develop. I'm sure they'll be back to it in a couple of years, but I don't think this is their year.
Yeah, I think to clarify with the DeSales thing, I was really debating. I could have put them down at 6 or 7 with STVM. I think it's just maybe who they're bringing back. I think also the fact that Andy Phelps even told us last year that Andrew Navarre is a great mastermind when it comes to the sport of volleyball. And he even said that to some extent that she's better than him when it comes to tactics. So I think that's probably why I give them the edge. And I think just from rating in general. But to be honest with you, I won't be surprised if DeSales falls easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Great coaching over there. Another thing too, though, like when we're scheduling, when we're making our rankings in the preseason, it really is very difficult. Like you can look at rosters and who graduated, and I don't know. It's kind of shooting darts at a wall and seeing what sticks to it. So I don't know. Yeah, I think these rankings, we saw it last year. The preseason rankings look way different by week 4. So all right, with that, that'll do it for the first episode of the 2024 season. I'm feeling good, excited. I feel like that, we learned a lot the past season, and it's good to come into it with kind of everything we learned last year, kind of hit the ground running. So should be a great year. Excited to get it going. This has been Ohio VolleyTalk. We'll catch you next week.